This story is based on real events. There's a silent trap that catches thousands of women after they turn 70. A trap so perfectly disguised as love, care, and concern that by the time we realize it, we're already trapped. My name is Amelia Ferreira. I'm 72 years old, and I'm here to tell you the story that almost took everything from me: my freedom, my identity, and my voice. If you're over 60 or if you have elderly parents, please don't leave this video. What I'm about to reveal can keep your family from going through the worst kind of suffering, the kind that is born inside the home, behind closed doors, disguised as affection. And if you're here, write in the comments, "I want to hear your story, Amelia," because what I'm about to tell you only makes sense if there's someone on the other side willing to listen. I've always been a strong woman, not physical strength, life strength. I'm the daughter of farm workers. I started working at 13. I became a professional seamstress at 20 and an entrepreneur at 32 when I opened my small sewing studio in Goiânia. I was the pride of my street. I sewed party dresses, wedding gowns, children's clothes, and sometimes even dreams. I was married for 41 years to a serious, honest man, quiet though. Ernesto was the type who showed love by doing, not by talking. We raised 2 daughters, Renata and Celia. Renata, the oldest, was always practical, organized, rational. Celia, the youngest, was the opposite: outgoing, emotional, a dreamer. And me? I was the center of gravity for both of them. When Ernesto died 3 years ago, I felt like the entire world kept spinning without me in it. He passed on a Sunday. After a lunch, he praised so much. "This is so good, Amelia," were his last words to me. The silence he left behind wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of someone who loses the ground under their feet. In the months that followed, Renata called me every single day. "Mom, did you eat? Did you take your medicine? Do you want me to come over?" And I always answered the same way: "It's fine, my daughter. Your mother knows how to handle herself." And I did. I always did. But the truth is, on the inside, I was melting like a candle left burning. The house was too big, the bed too big, the closet too big. Everything reminded me of Ernesto. Everything reminded me of his absence. One day, after I mentioned I'd slipped in the bathroom, nothing serious, but enough to make Renata panic, she made a proposal that would change my life. "Mom, why don't you come live with me in Brasilia? Here you'd have company, you'd have help. You wouldn't be alone." Celia supported it immediately. "Go, Mom. It's better for you. Renata has more structure there. You need care." I had always been strong, but I was tired. The idea of not sleeping alone in that empty house sounded too good. I should have been suspicious, but in that moment, all I wanted was to feel like I belonged somewhere again. The move happened fast. Renata was always efficient. "Mom, you don't need to bring everything. We already have furniture at my place, just the essentials." I sold furniture, donated clothes, emptied my studio. I put my sewing machine, my companion for 50 years, into a box I wrapped with almost motherly care. When I arrived in Brasilia, Renata showed me the room. "Look, Mom. We did everything with love." It was a small room, smaller than the little room where I used to store fabric in my studio, but it had a comfortable bed, a new wardrobe, and a nightstand with a small vase of artificial flowers. I smiled. I complimented it. I hugged her. I pretended I didn't feel that tightness in my chest, because there's one thing to visit your child's home and another thing to realize you're going to live there now, inside their life, their way. The first days were full of care. "Mom, rest. Mom, sit here with us. Mom, do you want tea?" I was treated like a queen nobody wanted to bother, but it didn't take long for the first request to come. "Mom, since you stay home and I work all day, could you have food ready when I get back? Nothing big, just some rice, beans, some meat." Me, who had always had a firm hand, thought, "It's just food. I've always cooked." And I agreed. The next day, "Mom, could you hang the laundry? The machine already washed it." The week after, "Mom, could you pick up Gabriel from school? Today is really hectic for me." And request after request, the line got thin. So thin it became invisible. When I realized it, a big part of the house routine was on my shoulders. I, Amelia Ferreira, the woman who raised 2 daughters almost on her own, who ran a business, who handled bank accounts, who organized everything. I was becoming a live-in helper without even noticing. I kept my firm posture, because that was always my signature. But something started scratching at me from the inside. One day, I gave my opinion at the dinner table. "Renata, I think Gabriel is spending too much time on his phone." She replied with a smile that wasn't really a smile. "Mom, that's how it is nowadays. You don't understand how it works." That hurt. Because in that second, I stopped being Mom and became the old lady who doesn't get modern life. Another day, I said I wanted to visit Goiânia to see my friends from my old sewing group. "Mom, no way. You're not that age anymore to be traveling alone." Not that age? Me. The woman who traveled across Brazil for cutting and sewing courses. Me. The woman who raised kids while Ernesto worked outside. Me. the woman who solved every problem in my life with my own hands. I stayed quiet, and that was my mistake. Every place has rules, but in that apartment, the rules weren't written, they were implied, and only I had to follow them. If I woke up too early, I made noise. If I woke up too late, it was fine, but it would be better if I tried waking earlier to help with the routine. If I watched TV in the living room, I was in the way. If I stayed in my room, I was isolating myself. If I cooked my way, it was too much seasoning. If I cooked their way, it lacked flavor. Little by little, I stopped being Amelia and became a piece in Renata's household puzzle, a piece that could be moved, used, rearranged, but never placed at the center. The first serious blow came when they tried to take over my finances. "Mom, let me handle your card. You don't need to worry about that." I answered immediately, "Renata, I take care of my own money." And she, with that sweet tone I knew so well, said, "It's just to make it easier, Mom. You're always forgetting your password." I wasn't forgetting. I just wasn't using it as often. I resisted. But that day I realized there was something dangerous behind all that concern. It wasn't help. It was control. And control is the first brick of a prison. The moment that marked the beginning of my collapse wasn't big. There was no fight, no shouting. It was simple, subtle, cruel. I was sewing. Yes, I finally had the courage to open my sewing machine after months when Renata walked into the room. She looked at the machine, at the fabrics, at me. And she said, "Mom, can you put this away? It looks ugly having these things spread out, and it takes up space. This isn't like your house. Here we need to keep everything organized." I felt my heart stop. Right there, in that exact moment, I understood. I didn't have a space that was mine anymore. Not even a room, not a table, not a corner. Not my identity. My sewing machine, my tool of independence, my symbol of life was being treated like a mess. And me? Like someone who gets in the way. That night, I lay down on a bed I didn't choose, in a room I didn't decorate, in a house that wasn't mine. And I realized that, for the first time in my life, I, the strongest woman I know, was being broken, slowly, in silence, by love, or by what they call love. And I decided I needed to do something, but I still didn't know what. After that night when Renata told me to put away my sewing machine, something inside me went quiet, not out of weakness, but because I started hearing things I had ignored before. Small phrases, small attitudes, fragments of truth that had always been there. And when we finally decide to notice, the whole world changes color. The first change came in the tone of the conversations. Before, Renata used to ask, "Mom, do you need anything?" Now she would say, "Mom, did you take your medicine yet? Mom, have you eaten lunch? Mom, don't forget this. Mom, don't do that." It was like I stopped being a mother and turned into a child. Me, Amelia Ferreira, who stood up to pushy salesmen, debt collectors, bank managers, store owners, difficult customers, and even Ernesto when he got stubborn. Now I needed supervision just to drink a glass of water. That started eating me alive. But I still tried to keep my composure. I've always been a firm woman, remember? But being firm isn't the same as being bulletproof, and I was starting to crack. The days began to look exactly the same. Wake up, help in the kitchen, take care of the house, pick up Gabriel from school, make lunch, wait for Renata to get home. Then come the subtle complaints, dressed up as advice. "Mom, you don't need to use that much salt." "Mom, don't leave the pot on the heat like that." "Mom, don't fold the clothes that way." "Mom, that towel doesn't match the table." It was always mom before the correction, as if saying the word mom made the criticism hurt less. It was so subtle, so delicate, and so destructive, because every sentence carried the same message underneath. You do it wrong. You don't know. You need me for everything, and the worst prison is the one you start believing in. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I had spent the entire morning cleaning the kitchen. That wasn't my job, but I did it because I believed it helped, that it prevented stress, that it made the atmosphere lighter. When Renata got home from work, she walked into the kitchen and said, "Mom, you didn't need to mess with anything here. I like things my way." It was the first time my voice came out without the filter of caution. "Then why do you keep asking me to help a little? This isn't help. This is work." Renata froze, like I had committed a crime. "Mom, don't talk like that. I just want you to feel useful." Useful. That word went straight through my chest like a knife. "I am useful, Renata. I'm just not your employee." She sighed like someone trying to be patient with a stubborn child. "Mom, you're taking everything the wrong way. I only want what's best for you." What's best for you? The favorite sentence of people who lock others up. I took a deep breath, but the feeling of injustice stayed hanging in the air. And when someone tries to bend a strong woman, that's always the beginning of a silent war. Days later, I came home early from the market. When I opened the bedroom door, I found Renata folding my clothes inside the closet. "What are you doing?" She answered like it was nothing. Organizing, obviously. Your drawer was a mess. My drawer, my clothes, my space. I was 72. I wasn't incapable. And even if I were, I still deserved respect. Renata, this is disrespectful. You don't touch my things without my permission. She flinched at my tone, but she didn't back down. Mom, I live here. You live with me. The house needs to be organized my way. That sentence hit my chest like rotten fruit. You live with me. It wasn't. You're welcome here. Now it was. You're here because I allow it. I felt a hot anger rise through my body, but I stayed quiet because in that moment I realized my daughter wasn't going to understand my side. Maybe because she didn't want to. Maybe because she couldn't. Maybe because it was more convenient this way. I always loved taking a morning walk. 7 a.m. was my ritual. But in Brasilia, Renata decided it was dangerous. Mom, don't go out alone. I don't like it. Again, I gave in to avoid a fight, to avoid causing worry. Then came other rules. Mom, don't wear those flip-flops anymore. They're slippery. Mom, don't climb on a stool to reach things in the cabinet. Mom, don't open the door for anyone. Mom, don't heat food on the stove by yourself. It was like I lived with invisible fences around me. And the more I accepted, the more fences appeared. Until one day I realized I didn't walk anymore. I didn't sew anymore. I didn't choose my food anymore. I didn't set my own schedule anymore. I wasn't living anymore. I was just taking up space. And the less I lived, the less I was Amelia. Renata decided to host a dinner for some friends. I offered to help. Of course. Like always, I spent the afternoon peeling vegetables, setting the table, making dessert. On the night of the dinner, everything looked perfect. When the guests arrived, they greeted me warmly. I smiled. I thanked them. But something strange happened. Renata spoke as if I wasn't even there. Life is so busy here, but I still manage to keep everything in order. I do almost everything. I organize it all. I listen to that lie. So comfortable for her, that invisibility, so heavy for me. It wasn't about credit, it was about existence. And in that moment, I didn't exist. I was the hand that chops, the arm that carries, the body that helps. But I wasn't a person. I didn't have a name, I didn't have a story, I didn't have a voice. It felt like I died a little, and nobody even noticed. One day while I was washing dishes, I felt a light dizziness. It was just exhaustion. But the plate slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. Renata ran in from the living room, terrified. Mom! What happened? Nothing, girl. It just slipped. I'm fine. But she was already panicking, and that same day, she made me sit on the couch to hear this. Mom, I don't think you can stay home alone anymore. Alone, Renata. I'm never alone. It's just that you're starting to get forgetful. That hit me like a slap. Forgetful? Me? The woman who tracked every penny coming in and going out of my studio? The woman who remembered birthdays, clients' measurements, old phone numbers? It wasn't forgetfulness. It was exhaustion. It was oppression. It was sadness. But for Renata, it was easier to say I was losing my abilities, because when someone labels you as fragile, it justifies every kind of control. In a conversation between Renata and her husband, one I overheard by accident, he said, "Have you noticed your mom is different?" Different how? Renata asked. Repetitive. Kind of confused. I think she's starting to have cognitive problems. I felt my soul leave my body. That was the next step. First, they treat you like a child. Then they make you unwell. Finally, they declare you incapable. And I knew exactly where that ends. With total control of my life, my routine, my money, my decisions. And the worst part? All of it disguised as concern and care. That night, I lay down and couldn't sleep. I looked at my hands. Strong hands, worn and marked from years of work. Hands that raised 2 daughters. Hands that built a life. And I thought, I can't disappear like this. I was strong. I always was. And even broken, a part of me was still shining. The flame was still there. Small, but there. And in that moment, I promised myself I will not let them kill who I am. I didn't know how. I didn't know when, but I was going to fight. Because I am Amelia Ferreira, and Amelia Ferreira was not born to live small. It was a Saturday morning. Renata walked into my room without knocking, like it was normal. In her hand, an envelope. Mom, we need to talk. I sat up on the bed, suspicious. She opened the envelope and spread a stack of papers on the bed. What is this? A suggestion, Mom. A proposal. I picked up the paper, and I almost passed out. It was a partial guardianship contract. Guardianship. As if I were incapable, as if I couldn't take care of my own life. I looked my daughter in the eyes. Renata, have you lost your mind? She took a deep breath. Mom, I just want to make sure you're safe. You're getting confused. You don't see your limits anymore. I stood up with a strength I didn't even know I still had. You are not taking my life from me, she tried to argue. Mom, that's not it. It's just to make things easier. Easier for who, Renata? For you? It was the first time she shrank back in front of me. I was shaking. With anger, with humiliation, with fear. with despair. Is that what I had become? A problem to manage? A situation to control? A burden? And right then, staring at that paper, the truth dropped on me. I wasn't living with my daughter. I was living under emotional guardianship, all of it disguised as care. That night, I closed my bedroom door and sat on the floor. For the first time in months, I cried. I cried like a woman who realizes she's losing herself. But when it ended, something inside me lit up. I made the most important decision of my life. I was leaving that house. I was taking my life back, even if it was the last thing I ever did. And that's when my freedom plan began. After the day Renata put that guardianship contract on my bed, everything changed. Not between us, because that had been breaking for months. It changed inside me, because in that moment, I understood, with zero doubt, that I was in danger. Not physical danger, emotional danger, psychological danger, identity danger. The kind of danger that doesn't leave bruises on your skin, but leaves deep scars on your soul. I realized that if I didn't react soon, I would stop existing. And I was not going to let Amelia Ferreira disappear inside her own daughter's home. On the outside, I stayed calm. I didn't confront Renata anymore. I didn't argue. I didn't provoke. I learned that sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon a woman can carry. I watched everything. The papers organized in Renata's drawer, the times she left for work, the moments the house was empty, the documents she kept in the office, the phone calls she had, even the way she talked about me. Yes, because I started listening more, listening without being seen. And that's how I discovered the trap was bigger than I imagined. One afternoon, while she spoke quietly on the phone with someone, I heard, "I only want what's best for her, but my mother doesn't understand things anymore. No, it hasn't gotten worse yet, but she's confused. Yes, I already looked for legal guidance. I just need her to agree." My stomach dropped. She didn't want to help me. She wanted to manage me. I wasn't mom. I was responsibility, a task, a fragile object. And worse, she was building a story about me so she could justify control. A story where I was incapable, disoriented, confused. That's how so many people my age lose their independence, and now it was happening to me. The next day, the house was empty. Renata left early. Her husband, Cesar, had a meeting. Gabriel was at school, and there, in the silence of that morning, I used my time with surgical precision. I grabbed my old notebook, the same one I've used since 1998 to write down sewing measurements, and I wrote, "Freedom Plan." Yes, I wrote it exactly like that, and I listed everything I needed to do. 1. Check my bank balance even without my card in my hands. 2. Find out which documents were with me and which ones weren't. 3. Call Celia, my other daughter, in secret. 4. Look for a simple apartment, my style, without depending on anyone. 5. Get my things without raising suspicion. 6. Leave that house. Beside it I wrote, "I am not a prisoner. I was just asleep." And in that moment, I felt a flame ignite inside me. The flame Renata tried to put out. The flame grief tried to put out. The flame routine stole from me, but it was there, alive and steady. Celia, my youngest, has always been sensitive. The one who cries at Christmas commercials. The one who feels other people's pain. The one who would never accept seeing me suffer. But Renata always made a point of looking like the responsible daughter. The daughter who knows what she's doing. The daughter who helps. And Celia ended up believing it. But I had to try. I called her at a moment when Renata wasn't home. "Hello, Celia? Mom, are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I need to talk to you, but you can't tell your sister anything." Silence. That heavy silence of someone who understands something serious just happened. "Mom, what is it? I want to live alone again. I can't take living the way I'm living here anymore." She took a few seconds before answering. "Mom, Renata does everything for you. You know that. Celia, listen to me. This isn't care, it's control." And I told her everything. The guardianship contract, the constant criticism, the control over my schedule, the way she treated me like a child, the invasion of my space, the attempt to take over my finances, the silence that was suffocating me. Celia was crying on the other end of the line. "Mom, I had no idea." "I know you didn't, but now you do. What do you want me to do?" My voice came out firm, so firm I surprised myself. "Help me get out of here, in secret." "Mom, that's dangerous." "More dangerous than staying?" She couldn't answer. "Okay, Mom. I'll help you." And in that moment, for the first time in months, I felt something I had forgotten. I wasn't alone. Celia told me to check my bank account. I didn't have my card anymore. Renata had kept it for my safety. But I remembered my password. I grabbed the laptop I had hidden at the back of my closet, between the winter clothes, and I logged in. When the numbers appeared on the screen, my heart stopped. There, right in front of me, was the proof. Several transfers had been made from my account to Renata's. Small ones, yes. For $200 here, or $350 there, or $120 to a pharmacy, $400 for help with groceries. I felt dizzy. That was it. That was it the whole time. Renata didn't just want to control my life. She wanted to control my money. And it wasn't because she needed it. Renata had a good salary, a good job, a good husband. It was because, in her mind, she truly believed she had the right. The right because I was living in her house. The right because it was for my own good. The right because she took care of me. But it wasn't care. It was appropriation. It was dominance. It was a form of ownership. And that was the deepest stab, not because of the money itself, but because in that moment, I realized my daughter didn't see me as a woman. She saw me as an asset to manage. Yes. Institutionalize. The word every elderly person fears hearing. The word that destroys families. The word that makes thousands of women lose their independence, legally. And I almost became one of them. It all started with a conversation I overheard by accident. I was folding clothes in the laundry room when I heard Cesar on the phone. Look, Renata and I are worried. Yes. Her mom is getting harder and harder every day. We're thinking about checking out a care home for a few days, just until she accepts professional help. Yeah. I know, but she doesn't accept anything. Yes, it'll be better for all of us. I froze. They wanted to put me in a care home without my permission, without my opinion, without my right to choose. And to justify it, they were building a story where I was incapable, confused, irresponsible. My entire body shook, because right then, in that moment, I understood. If I didn't leave that house immediately, I would lose my life as I knew it, not through death, but through erasure. And that kind of death hurts more than the other one. After I heard that conversation, I went up to my room and closed the door. I was shaking like I had a fever, shaking like my body was trying to warn me, you need to leave now. And it was in that state, heart racing, that Renata knocked on the door. Mom, are you in there? I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and opened it. I am. She walked in, sat on my bed like she was a therapist, and she said, Mom, I've noticed you've been more stressed. That's not good for your emotions. You need to accept that you're getting older. That was it. Right there. Those words, something inside me cracked, like glass being forced until it finally breaks, because this wasn't about aging. This was about losing the right to exist as an adult. Renata, I said, voice low and steady. Yes, I am getting older, but I'm not dead. I haven't lost my mind. I haven't lost my strength. What I've lost is my freedom. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. You took my freedom. You took my routine. You took my autonomy. You took my money. You almost took my dignity. She moved back 2 inches on the bed. Mom, I only do this because I love you. I pressed my hand against my chest. This isn't love. Love doesn't drain you. Love doesn't invade you. Love doesn't control you. Love doesn't erase you. Love doesn't turn you into a child. Love doesn't turn you into an employee. Love doesn't turn you into someone incapable. She was pale, and I was whole, because for the first time, I was telling the truth. And the truth sets you free, even when it hurts, even when it breaks things, even when it destroys bonds that seemed unbreakable. Renata, I finished. I'm leaving this house. Her reaction was a mix of shock and panic. Mom, you can't. I can. You have nowhere to go. I'll figure it out. You're not healthy enough. I'm healthier than you think. You can't live alone. I can. And I will. She started crying. I didn't. I had already cried everything I had to cry months ago. Now I was fighting. The next day, I used the empty house to keep building my plan. With Celia on the phone, I searched for small apartments, looked at studio listings, compared prices, searched for places near a market and pharmacy, wrote down real estate agency numbers, made a list of essential furniture, calculated initial expenses. Celia stayed with me the whole time. Mom, where do you want to live? Where I can be myself. Do you want to stay close to me? Maybe. But not in your house and not in hers. Okay, Mom, you'll have your own space. And the sentence she said next never left my mind. Mom, if you get your freedom back, you get your life back. Yes, that was it. Freedom and life are twin sisters. Lose one, and you lose the other. Renata realized something was happening. A mother doesn't lie to her children, but children underestimate their mother's intelligence. She came into my room at the end of the afternoon and said, Mom, you're acting weird, distant. Did something happen? I looked into her eyes. The eyes of the girl I once rocked in my arms. The same one I protected from the rain. The same one I defended when she fell off her bike and scraped her knee. And I said the sentence she least expected to hear. I'm leaving, and you're not going to stop me. She went cold. Mom, don't do this. You need me. No, Renata, I don't. You can't live alone. I lived on my own for 50 years of my adult life. But what if you get sick? Then I'll face it, but on my terms. You're confused. I'm not. You are. I have never been more lucid. She started raising her voice. Mom, You can't handle things. You don't understand how bad your situation is. I took a deep breath and I said, Renata, the one who doesn't understand the situation is you. I'm leaving because I refuse to live like a prisoner. Silence. And I finished. I'm going to live as a woman, not as a shadow. The next day, Celia showed up out of nowhere. Renata wasn't expecting it. When she opened the door and saw her younger sister there, she looked thrown off. Celia? What are you doing here? I came to pick up Mom. Renata froze. What? I came to pick up Mom. She's staying with me for a few days. That wasn't agreed on. She doesn't have to agree on anything with you. I came out of the bedroom with my bag in my hand. Renata looked at me like her world was collapsing. Mom, you can't do this to me. I touched her hand and said, with all the calm in the world, this isn't about you, my daughter. It's for me. And I walked through the door. I crossed it like I was stepping through a portal, like I was being reborn, like I was returning to the world. And in that moment, I felt alive again. When I stepped out of Renata's house, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Air. Real air. Freedom air. Life air. The air that fills your lungs and says, you're back. Celia was beside me, holding my bag like she was holding something sacred. And she was. Because inside that simple bag was everything I had left physically. My ID, my vaccination card, an old notebook of notes, and a photo of Ernesto. But inside me, I carried everything I was, and that was the part nobody could take. When we arrived at Celia's apartment, she welcomed me the way you welcome someone you love. No drama, no exaggeration, no tension. Mom, this is your home too, but you decide how you want to live. I'm not going to do for you what you can do for yourself. I smiled. Yes, that was care. That was love, not control. Not dominance, not infantilizing, respect. For the first 3 days, I slept in late like I hadn't in a long time. My body was exhausted, but my soul was waking up. On the 4th day, I did something simple, something that may sound small to someone who has never lost their freedom. I went for a walk, alone. The sun on my skin, the wind messing up my hair, the sound of cars, the movement of the street, all of it gave me a strange, beautiful, indescribable feeling. I wasn't being watched. I wasn't being judged. I wasn't following invisible rules. I was just walking, me, at my pace, in my life. And I cried. I cried right there in the middle of the street. I cried freedom. 2 days later, I sat down with Celia and said, I want an apartment of my own. She didn't panic. She smiled. I knew you were going to say that, and we started looking. We spent entire afternoons calling real estate agencies, visiting studios, comparing prices. I took notes like in the old days at my sewing studio. Ground floor, no stairs, big window, lots of sun, market 2 blocks away, quiet, but not isolated. And the more possibilities I saw, the more I felt my identity returning until we found it. It was a simple apartment, very simple. 1 bedroom. A small living room, a narrow kitchen, an old bathroom. But it had something no place in the last few months had offered me. A window that was mine. And when I opened that window for the first time and the wind came in, I understood I wasn't renting an apartment. I was renting my life back. I signed the contract with a steady hand. Celia looked at me with tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm so proud of you. And in that moment, I realized it's not age that defines independence. It's courage. And I had courage, even tired, even hurt, even wounded, even afraid, because fear exists to be faced. On my first night alone in my new apartment, I did something that had felt impossible months earlier. I cooked for myself, a simple omelet. It smelled like home. It smelled like life. It smelled like Amélia. I put the plate on the table. I sat down, and I took a deep breath. It was just an omelet, but it tasted like victory. Then I got my sewing machine. The box was beside me, waiting for the right moment. I set it on the table, threaded the spool, lowered the needle, and when I pressed the pedal, the sound of the machine echoed through the apartment, the most beautiful sound I had heard in a long time. Because that talk, talk, talk wasn't just sewing noise. It was the sound of Amélia coming back. It was the sound of my soul being stitched back together. It was the sound of freedom being sewn, stitch by stitch. And in that moment, I knew I was reborn. 2 days later, Renata called. I knew that moment would come. I answered. Hello, Mom. Silence. Mom, are you okay? I took a deep breath. I'm great. She sobbed. I would recognize that cry anywhere. Mom, I didn't want you to leave. I know that, Renata, but you wanted me to stay in a way that erased me. Silence again. She was crying. I wasn't. Mom, I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. You did because you wanted to control my life, not care for it. I just wanted to help. Helping is letting someone be who they are, not shaping them for your comfort. More silence. Then she said something that surprised me. Can I visit you? I smiled. Not out of pride, not out of victory, but out of love. Yes, daughter, whenever you want. That day, I understood that love doesn't cancel you out. Real love only exists when there are boundaries, when there are limits, when there is respect. And now Renata was learning that. The following weeks felt like waking up from an emotional coma. I went back to cooking my favorite foods, sewing dresses for neighbors, walking at my pace, reading my old novels, joining a local crafts group, laughing without fear, crying without guilt. And something unexpected happened. I found myself again, and my family had to find me again too. Because when a woman gets herself back, the entire world around her has to rearrange. Renata visited me 2 weeks later. She arrived shy, without that commanding air. She sat on my sofa, looked at my window, and she said, "Mom, now I understand. You needed this." "And you did too, Renata," I replied. She looked confused. "Me? You needed me to stop solving your life so you could learn to solve it yourself." She went quiet. "Mom, I want to be a better daughter." I held her hands. "Then start by being a daughter, just a daughter, not the owner of my life." She cried. I hugged her. And in that hug, I felt something had been restored. Not everything. There were still marks, but now there was space to rebuild. Gabriel, my grandson, came to see me the following weekend. He walked into the apartment and said, "Grandma, your place looks like you." It was the most beautiful compliment I've ever received, because for months I lived in a place that didn't look like me, in a routine that didn't look like me, in an existence that didn't look like me. And now my grandson could see what I felt. I had become myself again. He ran to my sewing machine, fascinated. "Grandma, you started sewing again?" I smiled. "I did, my love, and I'm never stopping again." And he said, "Good. You look happy." Yes, I was happy. But not a childish, naive, shallow happiness. It was an adult happiness, mature, earned, reborn. One day, at the crafts group, a new woman arrived, 76 years old, frail body, sad eyes. I sat beside her. "First time here?" She tried to smile. "Yeah, my daughter brought me. She thinks I'm alone too much." I recognized the tone, the hesitation, the discomfort. So I asked, "Do you live with her?" "I do. After my husband died, I went to her house, but it's not what I imagined." I took a deep breath, and I asked as gently as possible, "Are you happy there?" She looked down and whispered, "No." I held her hand. "Then sit here, because I have a story to tell you." And in that moment, I realized my pain wasn't for nothing. My freedom wasn't just mine. My voice could open doors for other women now. I could be an example, a lighthouse, a warning. I could be Amélia, whole, free, alive. Today, at 72 years old, I can say, I was imprisoned without bars, and I freed myself without the state. I freed myself with courage, with truth, with self-love. And I learned the biggest lesson of my life. Freedom doesn't end when age arrives. Freedom ends when you hand your autonomy to someone who doesn't know how to value it. But it can be reclaimed, always. And if you're living something similar, or if you fear living it one day, or if you have a mother, father, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, please listen to what I'm going to tell you now. An elderly person is not a child. An elderly person is not incapable. An elderly person is not a burden. An elderly person is an adult with a story, a past, dreams, and rights. And nobody has the right to steal that. If you're trapped in a routine that erases you, if you're living somewhere that weakens you, if you're being treated as dependent when you're still capable, please, don't accept it. Don't erase yourself. Don't surrender. Don't disappear. Your life is yours. Your freedom is yours. Your voice is yours. And above all, it's never too late to start over. I started over at 72. And you can start over at 60, 70, 80, or whenever you decide you deserve to live again. If this story touched you, if it changed something inside you, if it opened your eyes, then please, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might be living this same silent trap. Because sometimes one story is all someone needs to save their own life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me exist. And remember, freedom has no age, and independence doesn't expire.